Let's move on to the Independent. These numbers, so what happens, the autumn statement, which I'm going to get you to explain to everyone why that's important. But also, once you've done that, Alpesh, can you please explain to me how the electorate is supposed to get its head around numbers such as £75 billion?
Let me explain the autumn statement. Just think of it as another budget. We used to just have one budget of any importance, which was in the springtime. Then Britain turned to a system where actually increasing the autumn statement has become increasingly important. And just think of it as another budget.
Isn't it more political than...
It's particularly political at this time because we've got an election in 7 months. No matter what happens in May, we will have an election. So you could argue that all the figures take on far more importance because they're going to be played around by both parties, both major parties, before the election.
So let's talk about this figure on the front page of the Independent. £75 billion budget bombshell. Now, in the last few days we've been talking about, politicians talking about a £2 billion hole to fill in the NHS.
Dollars, I should say. But still a big number, $75 billion.
This says £75 billion.
Pounds, sorry, you're right. We're all getting mixed up.
But my point is, £2 billion is still a lot of money, but you can understand that when it comes to one entity, i.e. the NHS. When you now hear of a £75 billion budget bombshell, what does that mean? How can you visualise that?
Look, in one sense, it doesn't mean anything at all, and I'll tell you why. Because governments are able to borrow at the moment at next to 0% interest rates. So actually, it's like having a perpetual credit card where you're not paying any interest on it, so you might as well borrow. It's not really a problem. The reason it's a problem for you and me, and the best way to understand it, is not in terms of how big that number is and what it means in terms of government borrowing and what impact it may have to our future generations when they have to at some point pay it back, which we don't really care about because it's going to be our great-great-great-grandchildren who may end up having to pay it back. The reason it's a problem, the reason we've got a hole in this, is because they're saying income tax take has dropped. Why is that dropped? Because we're all not getting paid enough. Our salaries haven't gone up over the last 7 years since the credit crunch. We've all been asked to work harder without a pay rise. That's the real problem, and that's meant that shareholders in companies are getting fatter because we know companies are making more profits than ever because stock prices are at all-time highs. So the greedy capitalist shareholders are getting more of the take, but the workers are not getting higher salaries. It's not the Chancellor's fault. The Chancellor should be saying to companies and shareholders, increase wages and stop taking so much money as dividends.